Voters in the UK head to the polls today to choose a new government. It is the first election since the UK voted last June to leave the European Union.
Yeah, well, for more on this critical vote, joining us now, Bourne, Chair in Public Understanding of Economics at the Cato Institute. Ryan, good morning again.
Hi.
It seems to me that with the recent terror attacks that Theresa May's Conservative Party should be in a position of strength. Anything new with the polls today that we should be watching?
Well, you're right. In the past couple of weeks, the polls have narrowed, but actually the pollsters last night herded on a Conservative victory by about 6 or 7 points. The key difference between the polls, and the key reason why some polls show a much narrower lead, is a different assumption about how many young people are going to vote. Labour lead very, very strongly with 18 to 24-year-olds. If that demographic group comes out in droves, then Labour have got an opportunity to get pretty close to the Conservatives. Otherwise, it looks like a bit of a landslide.
I've read criticisms that Theresa May, they're calling her the Maybot, that she is coming across as robotic and repetitive. Have you seen that?
Well, she's run a terrible campaign, and the polls did narrow significantly after the launch of the Conservative manifesto. And I think the reason for that is that Theresa May ran on a ticket of being a strong and stable leader, and contrasted that with Jeremy Corbyn as a sort of weak and chaotic leader, and Labour as a weak and chaotic party. The problem is, there was some unpopular policies within her manifesto, one of which was about the finance of social care for elderly people, and she then U-turned on that policy after the criticism. So that didn't look very strong and stable, and at that point the polls narrowed significantly, which is why we're going into today with the Conservatives with about a 7-point lead on average rather than a 20-point lead.
You know, the top thing, of course, on the minds of the British people certainly is terrorism and Brexit, but what about the economy? I mean, the economy has actually held up against this backdrop, but there is an economic divide that we've seen between those that live in London, where there's much more economic growth, versus the outlying areas of the country. Do you think that that's going to be a factor, and would that be good for Jeremy Corbyn, I'm wondering?
Well, you're right in that Brexit should have been the main issue of this election. But look, what we've basically got is a choice between Theresa May and a relatively continuity Conservative government. But Jeremy Corbyn's economic agenda is very, very much of the extreme left. He wants to take Britain back to the 1970s in terms of very high marginal tax rates on income and corporations. He wants to renationalise huge swathes of the economy over time, starting with the energy sector, the rail sector, the water sector. And it's unclear what he's going to do with Brexit. He's talked about staying within the European single market, but also about controlling migration, which we know from the European Union's own stance, those two things are incompatible. So Jeremy Corbyn is not just an unusual and extreme candidate from the regards of his views on security, but also on the economy too.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. And of course, markets setting themselves up to not be surprised by a surprise.